Welcome to the Varsity Locker Room podcast. Your host, Frank Kill, with co-host Coach Matt Tabler. Here we are. Best time of the year with high school sports and opening up with high school basketball. We are back. This is week one. Boy, what a fantastic week. It's always my favorite week because it's Thanksgiving, high school hoops, and for me,
it's your birthday.
Happy
year
birthday.
Around the sun.
Yes.
What age does that make you, Coach Kill?
It makes me old, but 46 young. So,
well, we're reaching that age where we got to get tests.
Yeah, you
test
hell of a test this week.
Test that we don't really look forward to, but it needs to be done. And kind of wanted to talk a little bit about it. You know, the college coaches, they make it aware of prostate cancer, get your colonoscopy for colon cancer, and they've actually reduced the age to 45 on colonoscopies. Jamal Mashburn, a famous basketball player at Kentucky and then in the NBA, he leads a big thing that they talk about, boxing out colon cancer. And so
sponsored by Cologuard.
Yeah.
By the way, that's the in the box. That's what I did when I turned 45.
Well, I went in and I was dreading it, but it was something that needed to be done. I'm glad I got it done. But when they put you under, they put you under. And
best feeling in the world.
Well, he said, "Where do you want to go?" before he put me under. And, you know, my wife's going to kill me because all I ever think about is sports. And I remember Bob Segerson saying he cut his head the one day. If he cut his head, all these basketballs would fall out. Well, if you cut my head, all these sports things. So I was like, well, I want to dream about going to Jamaica. And he goes, well, we're going to go to Jamaica. And so I was put under, and I wasn't in Jamaica. I was in a Cleveland Browns uniform, and we were playing at Huntington Bank Field, and I was right beside Coach Stefanski, and we were in our all-white uniforms for some reason. We don't wear white at home, but this dream was so vivid, and the crowd was chanting, Tabes, Tabes, and we were driving, and he put me in. He was like, Matt, you're in. Kevin Stefanski puts me in the game. I go to the huddle. Jameson gives us the play, and I run out wide. I remember looking it over to the referee. You guys can't see me. I put my thumbs up, and he was like, yep, you're on the line, ready to go. And the crowd erupted when I went into the game.
This is a very vivid dream.
Vivid dream. And we're about ready. I think they're going to get me in open space. The Browns fans were excited to see me on the field. It was the final drive. And all of a sudden, I hear Stefanski go, Matt. And the next thing I know, it's Amanda, my wife, going, Matt, wake up. So that was, I know that was kind of a goofy story, but I was playing for the Cleveland Browns. I wasn't in Jamaica.
Another squirrel moment.
Yes. And that's just what it is. It's sports, always on my mind. I know, Coach Kill, it's always on your mind. But getting back to it, happy birthday. Happy 46th in the prime of your life.
With the best week, we also have famous football game that's going to take place, Notre Dame, USC.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
My bad. High State, Michigan.
They do play this week?
Yeah. and again, it's amazing how many people put things on hold or work around it. I was at the Rotary Club the other day. Someone actually got married on a High State, Michigan game. I was like, you had to be blacklisted from the family because you just don't do that if you're a High State or a Michigan fan. And for me, I never really cared because I'm a neither fan. So I root for God's team, which is Notre Dame. But we're talking high school hoops this week. And, you know, for us, for you, the last couple years, you got to experience a tip-off classic as a coach. Obviously, you were a player at one point and experienced it. It's a different feeling. And when you open up the season, you know, the way that we do here in Lima with the tip-off classic with Shawnee, Elida, Bath, and LCC, you're bringing four communities together that are actually very passionate about sports. And when you bring it under at the Elida Fieldhouse, kind of the mecca field houses around here, it's a great environment. I really feel bad for other schools that don't get that experience to open it up. But, you know, I always opened up, you know, at a Continental or when I was at Lincoln View, Ottoville or something, you know, it just didn't have that same vibe. You got excited because it was the first game of the season, but nothing is brighter than the lights at Elida Fieldhouse.
Well, tournament atmosphere. It's a tournament atmosphere. You're selling out the Fieldhouse. I still remember back my first game playing as a junior for Lima Central Catholic, and we were going to have a really good basketball team. And Coach Segerson had me dressing JV and varsity. And he put me in the varsity game, my first varsity game. And I remember Hutch called fist. And that's basically everybody clear out. I'm going to the rim. If they stop me, I'm kicking it out. And he calls fist and he points at me and I'm like, oh no, I get nervous.
I'm not ready.
Yeah. And he drives and he kicks it out. And I knocked down my first three of my high school career. And it was in front of a packed house. And then all those bright lights went away. All those butterflies went away. Needless to say, I never dressed a JV game that year then after I had a pretty good performance for myself, you know, on a very, very good basketball team. But that atmosphere, you cannot simulate it that first week like you have at the field house. And so what better to start out with the Tip-Off Classic?
Definitely. And I know they always do a really good job of, you know, having the banquet at Milano's, sponsored by Memorial or St. Rita's, Mercy Health. That's what I was trying to get to. And, you know, so they got the great sponsorships of people. The trainers are always so good, you know, but you think about just starting the basketball season. And as a head coach, everything's running through your mind. Do I have this in? Do I have that in? And then on top of that, it's Thanksgiving the night before, you know, so as a coach, how much planning can you possibly squeeze in and try to hopefully help that the kids have it all understood as well?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, what was your schedule like, Frank, when you took the Birds in a tip-off? What's your normal week starting like with Wednesday when they probably didn't have school? Wednesday, Thursday leading up to your Friday night game, what would you do?
Well, I'm telling you, it was different every year because like my first year in 2010, they got done playing a football game on that Saturday before. So I had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then try to throw in a little bit on Thanksgiving to prepare. And unfortunately, my first year, I had a lot of guys come back after the state championship team that won it in 2010. They came back. So there wasn't a lot of things that we had to do. I just had to get a basketball in their hands. Now, the years that I had experience, and let's just say 2013, 14, and 15, with that group of team, there was a lot of basketball already, you know, kind of being taught. So getting that week, I really got them out of bed. I know they didn't like it a lot, but I got them out of bed on that Thursday of Thanksgiving just to get them some conditioning because I know they're going to go eat a bunch. I still wanted a ball in their hand because we knew within, 36 hours, they were going to be playing a basketball game and they had to be prepared. And I don't know if you're ever prepared fully because there's so much that goes into the season. You got a handful of plays. I mean, I tried to minimize it because you didn't want to overload them.
Yeah. Well, what we did at Elida was on that Wednesday, we would always have a morning practice. Like you said, getting them out of bed is very important. Elida's kind of gone to a schedule where they don't have the kids Monday and Tuesday. But I know that Coach Howard got the kids up early today, kind of followed our schedule that we did the last couple of years. We fundraised then in the early afternoon. A lot of people don't realize these stories of we have the kids practicing, then they're going to do a fundraiser, then they're going to come home.
So what was that fundraiser? I mean, it was obviously beneficial for basketball.
Oh, without a doubt. We'd shoot 100 free throws. They would go out and solicit funds from family, friends. And we tried to do it the weekend before Thanksgiving where they could get the money, and then we would do it the Wednesday before, and we'd raise a boatload of money for prizes. But it was simulating basketball shots, getting a lot of free throws up. So we would shoot the free throws. I never brought them in on Thanksgiving. Coach Howard's going to have a non-mandatory practice Thursday in the morning. I just never did that. I know Marion Local's famous for that for football. They have their Thursday morning practice bright and early. They always take pictures. Coach Goodwin does a good job of getting that out. So we never did that. And then we simulated Friday like a Saturday game. We'd bring them in for a shoot around. We would go through everything, tie up any loose ends that we needed to. And then the big thing was we would always tell them, there has to be a happy medium from after the workout in the morning to the game time. You can't be on your feet going to the mall. I don't know if kids go to the mall or wherever they're going to go, where they're going to be walking around a lot, but you can't lay on the couch all day and watch football. You have to have that happy medium. So that was kind of the schedule that we stuck to leading into the tip-off for Friday night.
I always remember for about 4 years, I had a group of guys that liked to go Black Friday shopping Thursday night, and the mall was always open until 2 a.m. Well, I'm like, guys, we have a game the next day. We have a curfew. I will give you till, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, but you have to go home. And I remember walking the mall about 11:30, 12 o'clock to see how many guys were there. And they're like, you were serious. You were going to check up on us. Like, yes, I need you to be, kind of disciplined so that you are going to go home so you don't stay up so late. But everybody is different. And I just think when it comes to planning for practices and stuff, how much do you put in? You got an entire, I was not
We
as
had
blessed.
a full practice.
You had a full practice, in your full practice. I want to ask you this question. Did you have a late with like 5-second, 3-second play at the end of the game?
So 2 years ago at Elida, we faced a lot of games where we felt we were really unprepared. We had plays in, but I don't think we simulated those enough. So we dedicated 2 days a week, and Coach Howard was our offensive coordinator, and we would simulate a 10 to 15 minute segment, and we would go over those segments with clock, have somebody run the clock, and I would give the scenario. I wouldn't tell Coach Howard, I'm like, you have your 1 minute timeout, design a play, you're down 2. They would have the play designed, but he would be able to draw it up for him and simulate it just like a game. So we practiced those a lot.
I remember Seg always did, they called it TD, and the kids always knew it. But I can tell you this, over my 13 years of being a head basketball varsity coach, I don't know if I ever even had maybe about 2 opportunities to run a TD play. So I didn't waste a lot of time in that. But there were a few times, early on in the season where you get that chance and you would draw it up, and hopefully the kids would kind of like, okay, I get what they're saying. And then the timeout would be over, and I would say, hey, coach, now what side of the floor do I go on? So it's almost like, how much do you practice those things and how much do you don't?
Yeah. Well, that leads us into the game of the week. It's going to be this week. It's going to be LCC at Elida, the second game of the tip-off, and that is going to be brought to you by Frickers of Lima, where now for all season, stop by, get select appetizers, half price after 9 p.m. Perfect for after the ball games, practice, or end of a long work day.
Well, we got LCC. Our game of the week is, the T-Birds versus the Bulldogs. And again, Coach Matt Tabler, Coach Frank Kill here, this was a big rivalry, and it still is, but, obviously a personal rivalry that you and I had. And I remember, during those tip-off games, it's like, how much do I talk to this guy? Because you're nervous, we're on edge, my nerves are on edge, but I try to talk to as many people as possible so I wasn't as nervous. And the kids will always feed off of your nerves. And you are a nervous, jittery guy where, you get game face as soon as you leave the house.
Yes.
So it's not something that like kids can just come up and kind of shoot the crap with you. You're in game mode.
Yeah, that's just probably my personality, and it's more of people sometimes think you're snubbing them or that it's just your mind's going overboard. You're thinking everything through in your mind, just preparing yourselves. But this opening tournament, like we alluded to earlier, was formed in 1989-90, and that's, you talk about a rivalry between you and I. That's, also dates back to Coach Adams and Coach Segerson, and 2 of the founders of this great tournament. And actually, LCC has won 12 times. Elida has won 10 times. We'll get into Shawnee and Bath and how many they've won, but we're talking about the game of the week. So LCC won it last year. But again, 12 titles for LCC, and I know you played a part in those, and Coach Segerson played a part in those. Well, obviously Coach Powell was the 3rd LCC coach to win a tip-off classic, and Coach Adams and Coach Thompson, they had the other 10 wins. I did never get one of those victories. So.
Well, if you think of those first times in the 89-90 season, obviously it was new. Now everybody just expects it. And so when, a few years ago when we had to cancel because of football, LCC had to drop out, it just didn't have that same vibe. But, it has to go on. The show must go on. And the reality is when you have 4 schools and there's a hiccup in there because of football, it just doesn't have the same vibe. And I felt terrible that year, but everything was out of my hands. But, at the end of the day, the show goes on because it's a great show. The lights are bright, stars come out. People from all over come out. And I think more and more people are getting into this swing of like, hey, this is a great opportunity. It's kind of like the Daytona 500. It kicks your season off with a bang between 4 communities. And I think you don't get any better than that around here that has that tournament atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, let's look at the T-Birds. We kind of previewed them we previewed them in our Northwest Conference preview, but they finished last year at 26-3. They lost to Berlin Highland in the state semis. And Elida finished 16-8 with a district semi loss to St. Mary's. Last year, LCC defeated Bath in the first round of the tip-off, and Shawnee defeated Elida. And then Lima Central Catholic went on to win the title in a very tight game versus Shawnee last year.
Again, the T-Birds, they won the last 6 meetings between these two teams. I think, it's one of those, opportunities that I think Elida has learned from. I think they've grown. They're way more mature now than they were, a couple years ago. You look at a guy like Zori Island, who's been the kind of the captain, the quarterback of the basketball team. He is now a senior. He's going to have that experience. Hopefully his maturity and the maturation process has taken place. And you got a guy like Amari Walsh, who's really kind of coming into his own. So I really look at those two guys as being the leaders of the Bulldogs.
Well, it's a very good backcourt, and it's an experienced backcourt. LCC doesn't boast that if they had everybody coming back like they were supposed to, they would have just as much experience as Elida. But yeah, like you said, Elida has won the last 6 meetings, 13-7 record versus the Bulldogs.
LCC's won the last 6 meetings.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're right.
LCC?
Yeah, no,
yes.
But it's good. But the problem is, as you said, they lost so many experienced players last year with only returning Jordan Pretty, who scored 28 points, a year ago.
Versus
Elida,
yeah.
He's got that capability. And I think with last year's experience as a sophomore, who's now a junior, I look for bigger things for Jordan to take place.
Well, without a doubt. And he's had that experience. And he also has Matthew Quatman. I know Matthew was banged up a little bit at the end of the season, a guy that logged a lot of minutes during the football season. And I know he hasn't scrimmaged. I know that Coach Powell's hoping to have him. And then you got a guy like Drew Peaster that's back, that he sat out the back half of the season, but he was able to play in the tip-off last year as well. So he does have some guys there, but then it's new guys that did not play in the tip-off last year. And you talk about a Brady Parker. The lights won't be too bright for this young man. I mean, he had a terrific football season. He's played in front of big crowds. I actually had an opportunity to go watch them practice as well. He can shoot the basketball. And then they have Xavier Purnell, Jackson White, and then his 2 freshmen. And I'm excited to see these 2 guys perform on the big stage. And when we talk about Azad Burton, man, he has a nice big frame, does not look like a freshman out there. I think he has him penciled in as a starter. And then another good, just a jitterbug out there, Jeff Williams. That kid can play too.
Well, if Azad Burton's not penciled in, he needs to be inked in, because this kid's a stud. I mean, I watched him last week against St. Henry in scrimmage. He played extremely well, and I think he's going to complement Jordan very, very well as well. And again, you talked about Drew Peaster as a guy that has put on some weight, looked really good, got some good hops, but it's the second year for Coach Powell. It's a tip-off classic, and again, you're learning he's starting over because he lost so much experience. But with Ryan Howard, got a lot of experience back. So it's going to be 2 different teams than what it was a year ago.
Well, I don't know. Were you in the group text with Coach Powell last night when he texted about what year Coach Howard graduated? Were you in that text?
Yeah, I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he was. I think Coach Powell was more worried at the banquet last night if he was the oldest coach with us 2 being gone. He felt like he might be the oldest, but I think Ryan has him by a year or 2. I look for a very good matchup in this game. And so I kind of want to pose this to you, Frank. You're only 2 years removed from coaching LCC. Let's say that you have what Coach Powell has. This is your personnel that's sitting in front of you. How are you game planning? And I'll be the coach for Elida with this personnel. How are you game planning versus Elida? Or are you not even game planning? Are you more worried about yourself? What would be your outlook going into this game?
Well, I think you answer both those questions with, I take my personnel, what are we good at versus what are we weak at? And I think, size-wise is a big problem for LCC versus, like, you look at Elida, you got Parker Krim, who's a big stud. Elida, athletic, fast, want to get to the hoop. How can I stop them from getting to the hoop? Now, I know Coach Powell, he's a man-to-man guy, as I was, but I'm not sure Elida has the shooters that they had in the past. You lose a lot of guys from last year's team that could shoot the ball. And I think of like David Edscorn, who could shoot the ball from anywhere. Jackson Kovold, another guy who could shoot the ball. And I think that there's opportunities for LCC to stop penetration, because that's what Elida wants to do. They want to get deep in the paint and they want to be able to attack the basket.
So is that what you're going to do? Are you going to run some zone? Are you holding that? Are you going to hold that till the third quarter? Are you going to show that early? Or is it just the way the game plays out? If the penetration of Elida is hurting you, are you going to that zone?
You think about what the officials are going to call as well. I mean, if they're going to allow you to hand check and be a little physical, and they're not going to call it as tight, you could play man because, you can help, you can make the game a basketball, a physical game. But if the officials come out and start calling tic-tac, hand checks, arm bars, and stuff like that, guys might get in foul trouble. And the only way you can prevent another guy from getting in foul trouble is by going to a zone and playing a little more gap defense versus being up on the ball, because Elida wants to get by you. So do I hold it until the second quarter, third quarter? It just all depends on the flow of the game. Yeah. I mean, you could have the game plan, and you know this. You can have a game plan. You might have to go to plan B, plan C.
Yeah, you always have to have those in your back pocket. For me, when I'm preparing for LCC, looking on the defensive end, I know I got to get to the shooters. If I'm planning for this team, though, I'm not letting Jordan Pretty hurt me. So I'm running a second guy. I'm going to let a guy that doesn't have the varsity minutes, we're going to leave him early. And I know you don't want a guy to see his first shot go in, but I'm afraid of Jordan hurting me. So I'm running a second guy at him at times. And then I'm looking to see if they are as conditioned as we are by getting up and down the floor. Now, I would never usually, with most of your teams, with this personnel, I would definitely go to a zone press. The reason why I go to a zone press is I know those freshman guards, they'll be able to get by our pressure. I don't think that pressure will help. It's them making a decision in a zone press and getting the ball up the floor. So I'm going to show you a little zone press at the beginning to see how they react to it. If they seem uncomfortable, I pull it off, and then I pull it back out a little later. Then on the offensive end, I get the mats out. We get the football mats and we start hitting people, because LCC is notorious known for slapping your hands, and they are very physical. So our whole practice is we're running into dummies all week, and we're talking about ball security, making sure that we don't have those unforced turnovers, and be able to handle not LCC's pressure full court, but that half court pressure.
Well, on LCC's roster, they have like 5 guys that are sophomores or freshmen. They're going to have the jitters. They've never seen lights like this in terms of being bright and knowing that this is the first game, the magnitude of the tip-off classic. So I think, nerves are big factor here. You said it, best, it's the tip-off. I mean, they're not going to be prepared, but if you're Elida, I think I like the zone press, because how many practices do you think that they worked on a press breaker? You could work on it, but it's only been 2 or 3 weeks that they've had the full squad because of the late start of football. So you take advantage of that. But knowing the Coach Tabler mentality, he always said, we're going to let this guy beat us. We're going to let him shoot. We're not going to let Jordan Pretty beat us. Yeah. We're going to run a guy at him. We're going to make a Matthew Quatman beat us. We're going to make a Drew Peaster beat us. That's the risk, and then there's the reward. Yeah. It's the gamble that you make. And in high school sports, you can do that, because how many teams have 5 guys on the floor that can beat you?
Yeah. And then that whole, like you said, that's how I play that first game. Then when we meet in January again, where these guys that are inexperienced have 10 or 12 games, now it's a whole different game plan. You can throw that scouting report out. But I look forward to a good game. I'm not picking a game because I'm going to be doing analysis for WIMA with Alex Wolf, and I'm very excited. It's my first game. So I'm not going to make a prediction, but I think we made this the Frickers game of the week just because we see a very, very good game coming Friday night.
Again, you are listening to the Varsity Locker Room with Frank Kill and Coach Matt Tabler. It's weird for me to say Coach Frank Kill because I'm not a coach, but I guess I'll always be a coach.
Our kids always call us coach, and that's very flattering.
It is. But we think about some other games that, in terms of rundown, again, presented by Stolly Insurance, looking out for you and your family for over 100 years. Top-tier agents who treat you with the respect and get you the answers you need when you need them the most. I think about Stolly Insurance. I can call John Wade at any time. When I crashed my van into a deer a couple weeks ago, 2:15 in the morning, John Wade answers a phone call. So again, that's not part of the Stolly plug, but that's my plug for John Wade. And
great insurance company. Yeah, I've dealt with them with some of our rental properties, and they do an excellent job over there. So when we start to preview this week 1, it is crazy. And we were talking about this before we started recording, is Wednesday night now is opening night, and they started this a few years back, and we're starting to see more and more games being played on this Wednesday night. And I kind of tossed this question out to you, and maybe you could share with the audience if you like this or not. But wouldn't it be cool if the Tip-Off Classic was played Wednesday night? That would be this evening. You get the day off for Thanksgiving, and then you come back with the championship games on Friday. Would you think that would be a good idea?
I'm not one to mess with tradition. So I don't want to be that guy that says, oh, let's do it on Wednesday and Friday. And then you get all the old timers, all the traditionalists going, well, what happened to the Friday and Saturday? Well, sometimes it's okay to change. I actually don't think it'd be a bad idea. I think, because a lot of teams used to do, the OHA used to allow you to do a preview game, charge admission, do this, do that. But now that teams are playing on a Wednesday, it kind of gives them that Wednesday excitement. Everybody's coming home for Thanksgiving break. College kids, a lot of kids are already home. Let's face it, a lot of the local establishments around here, this is kind of their Black Friday on Wednesday for making some money. So why not throw a high school basketball game in there for boys? And it's kind of the kickoff. We think of teams that are around here, like right now, like OG is going to be playing Van Buren. What a great night to kick off, because bringing back the community, then they can go to their Thanksgiving break on Thursday, and then they can reminisce and talk about, the Titans or the Black Knights, because that's what's going to take place. And if you did that to the tip-off, man, the magnitude that it would have.
Yeah. And
what are your thoughts?
I like it. I think that now, since we've gone to 7 divisions, we might as well change everything. And if you win your state semifinal game this year, some of them will have 7 days off. Some of them will have 8 days off before their state championship game, which is just totally ridiculous, which we'll cover here a little bit later in the show. But I like that, where you get an extra day kind of prep. I know that I probably still wouldn't have that Thursday practice, and we would probably keep things the same. I don't know what it would do to revenue. I don't know how many girls games are played, but just seeing the list you alluded to in the WBL, OG playing at Van Buren. In the MAC, we have St. Henry at Russia. And then in the BVC has seemed to really like this night, as Ada is going to Ridgemont, Macomb at North Baltimore, New Regal at Riverdale, and Walpock at Jefferson. As well, in the Northwest Central Conference, Northmore will be at Elgin, and Findlay will kick off their season against Toledo Spartans.
Well, and you talked about, changing things, which you would say is changing. I remember a few years ago talking to someone in the higher world of ranks of Delphi St. John's, asking me, hey, would it be okay if we changed the Sunday game to a Tuesday? And I absolutely said, hell no, because I ain't touching that, because there's too many old timers that would be like, what are we doing? LCC St. John's always plays on a Sunday.
Not only old timers, I think God would be disappointed.
Correct.
That's a Sunday game.
The Holy War wouldn't be as holy because it's not on a Sunday.
Not
so
at all.
I like tradition. I like the fact that they still play Friday, Saturday, because it keeps the vibes going, from the Friday to the Saturday. But it's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Well, we can be dreamers, I guess. All right. Moving on to Friday night. Let's look at a couple games in depth here in the WBL. The first night, or the first game of the Tip-Off Classic, is Bath versus Shawnee. Bath has lost 9 out of 10 versus Shawnee out of the last 10. Last year, they lost 70-46. That was a WBL game. They did not meet in the Tip-Off Classic. It's been 11 years since Bath won their first game. They've won the tip-off twice, once in 1995 and once in 2012. I guess
12 would have had like Terrence Sullivan.
Yeah. And that was the last
twins.
first game they won, is that 12-13 season. And unfortunately, we talk about this, and they talk about it a lot at the tip-off. One team has to start out 2-0. Two teams have to start out 1-1. And unfortunately, one team's going to start out 0-2. And Bath, unfortunately, has been on the wrong side too many years in a row.
I still remember in 2009, LCC starts 0-2. And I remember, this is SEG's state championship team, who then, went on to win later that year. And everybody was like all up in arms because they didn't go out and win it. Well, it was a really good tip-off classic. And unfortunately, a lot of people put a lot of stock in how you start the tip-off classic. Well, you know what? It's a long season. And then at that time, it was only 20 games. So there's still a lot of teaching going on. Well, it's really depressing as a head coach to walk out of there going, gosh, we didn't win a game this weekend.
Yeah.
How are we going to bounce back from this? But I think the tip-off does that to you. It challenges you. It tests you. It also reveals a lot of things about your squad because are we prepared? Are we not? What do we need to continue to work on? Most coaches know this. It's just a matter of the players going out and doing it.
Well, setting up this matchup, they're going to play the Indians, and the Indians have won 5 out of the last 7 tip-offs. They are tied with Elida with 10 titles. LCC leads the way with 12. Like we said, Bath has 2. Coach Triplett is looking to be the 3rd coach to win 6 times. 6 times the tip-off. The other 2 coaches, Coach Seg has 7, Coach Adams has 6. So Coach Triplett has a lot on line. I know he's not worrying about those personal feats, but just kind of setting up this game, Frank. If you're looking at Bath, what do you think Bath is looking with a new coach and Coach White? And then, let's tell me a little bit about Bath and what do you think they need to do to be successful?
Matchup-wise, from height standpoint, they're going to be fine. I mean, they got a 6'5", 6'4" guy, where you got the Berkeys that are 6'5", 6'4", but they're going to play different positions. But if you're Dre White, you got to be super excited knowing that, hey, this is my first year. He's got a great assistant coach and Coach John Cook and Gabe Young on the bench with a lot of varsity experience, a lot of high school experience. So having Coach Cook and Coach Young at his side to help Dre with these situations, what a plus.
Well, he has Jackson Foster. He played last year. He's returning, 6'3" guy that can shoot the ball. He's going to have a tough assignment. I look for him to match up, and Coach White's a man-to-man guy as well. I look for him to match up against Beckett. And then Logan Markley, he's back from last year. He'll probably play on Beckett, maybe, because then you throw in another 6'6" guy, and we'll talk about Shawnee a little bit with Jagger. But what I see out of Coach White's team is they're going to play hard, they're going to play defense, and they're going to be disciplined. And I see this team improving throughout the season. So no matter the results, this is just one weekend of many weekends to come. And Coach White is a teacher. Whatever outcome comes from this game, they're going to learn from it, and they're going to get better.
Yeah, definitely. And, Mark Triplett, he's very comfortable with the tip-off. He's been very successful over the last 8 years at the Tip-Off Classic. You bringing back Beckett Berkey, who is 6'6". Then you have his brother, Travick Berkey, 6'7". 2 guard, 1 guard, whatever you want to call him. He's a guard. So the matchups are not going to be quite fair. It'll be interesting, as you talked about Coach White's, philosophy on defense. Will he mix it up because of the mismatches? But I'm really looking forward to this matchup because it's going to set the tone for the tip-off. I remember a few years ago, and I can't recall what year it was, but I remember Bath couldn't score a basket against Shawnee.
That's the toughest. Are you saying they were stuck on 0?
0.
That's the toughest first game of the year to get that first basket.
0.
Yes.
And, when you go 6 minutes without scoring a basket, there's only so many timeouts that you can burn, try to kind of reorganize your team. But the reality is it's game time. Yeah. And, what you did during the preseason and during the off season really exposes your skills that you have. And so if you're Mark Triplett, you got to be really excited knowing who you brought back. You're bringing in Jagger Hutchins, who's 6'7", stretch 4, another kind of guard, but can go down low. They got a lot of shooters, and these guys are all familiar with the tip-off, in terms of playing at the Elida Fieldhouse. So I look at Shawnee's experience versus even Bath. I know they play there or play at the Fieldhouse during the regular season. It's just a different environment for them.
Yeah, it's going to be 2 fun games to call. Another game in the WBL team, and we figured we'd feature this a little bit because it's kind of interesting. We got Crestview at Van Wert. Last year, Crestview knocked off the Cougars 55-42. In their last 10 meetings, though, it is 5-5, so it's pretty even. This game was usually pushed back later in the season because one of the football teams would make a run. It's been Van Wert lately. Sometimes it was Crestview. But now they are playing the first weekend, and I think probably why this is so intriguing is Coach Best still teaches at Crestview. His last game he coached at Crestview was a state championship game, took a few years off, and now he's back leading the Van Wert Cougars against his old team.
Well, when you think about this, can you tell me, they used to have a tip-off classic. Can you tell me
They
the
do.
4 schools that were in that tip-off
I'm going to
classic?
say those two, of course. I'm going to say Lincoln View as 3, and the 4th team, it has to be around there. I'm going to say Ottoville.
Wrong-o.
Oh,
I believe it was Wayne Trace.
Wayne Trace. I'm
But
going to fact check you on that one.
You fact check me on that. But that's, the intriguing matchup is the Crestview, Van Wert, Jeremy Best kind of drama, because he still teaches at Crestview, but here he is leading the Cougars, who are going to be young. They have one senior, I believe. And the reality for Coach Jeremy Best is his last game, he did win, but he's now taking over a new program with new expectations, with some more talent. So it should be pretty fun.
Yeah, I look for a matchup. I know Coach Best ain't going to make it about himself. I mean, he's going to make it about his kids. Obviously, a good coach does that. I'm sure the adrenaline's probably flowing a little more than usual. I'm anxious to see the step that the young Van Wert Cougars have made from last year's team, which they didn't win many games, to this year under new leadership. Those kids got better, whatever coach they were going to be with. But I'd like to see a Keaton Welsh. I'd like to see what kind of progress he's made. The 2 freshmen that he brings in with Kelly and Crummy. I'd like to see those kids play. Crestview has a lot back as well, and Coach Etzler does a fine job. So that will be an interesting game to see. On to the Northwest Conference, we have also going on in the WBL. We have Walpock will be playing at Jefferson and Versailles at Salina. Now moving on to the Northwest Conference, we have Perry at Allen East. This game was notoriously played at the end of the season, and because, again, we'll touch base here with the 7 divisions, everything's been shortened a week. They had to move the schedule all around, and now Perry is playing Allen East in the first game. Last year, Allen East won a tight battle, 45-43. They've won the last 2 years, but only have gone 2-8 over those 10 years. I know the 14 years I was at Perry, we went 14-0. And our boss, my boss, Mr. Schrader, the great Mr. Schrader, always told me, I want you to beat Ada, and I want you to beat Allen East. Those are 2, and he also threw in a Waynesfield Goshen. So those games meant a lot to us at Perry, and I know him being in charge of Perry that he was excited when those games came up. So I look for a good matchup. I'd like to see what Coach Nolde has put in. I know that the frustrations of a coach losing a player in the caliber of Marcus Hill, who transferred to Elida. He does have 2 guys that he returns that has some experience, in Boss Horrison, and the other one's slipping my mind, that had some varsity experience. He was the quarterback on the football team. But other than that, their height is going to be a real challenge. They don't boast a lot of height. Allen East brings in a guy, Coach Belcher from Anna, and he's a new coach. He probably doesn't know much about this rivalry, but this game is being played at Allen East. I look for 2 teams that they're not going to have the crowds that they're going to have at the Tip-Off Classic, but they're going to have a nice crowd because they're only 10 miles apart, and this is an old Northwest Conference battle. So I look for this to be a hard-fought game.
Oh, it always is. I mean, again, throw the records out because they don't have a record. Everybody is 0-0 at this point. So, to get excited for that first game, jitters. I mean, no matter if you're playing a tip-off or your first game, you're going to have the first game jitters. Can Perry build off of what they lost last year in terms of players lost, graduation? Coach Thomas Nolte, a deep planner, but again, you got to go out and play the game. And I think Allen East, they have some shooters, they have some really good guards that coming back. It's going to be, to me, it's a matchup, probably a mismatch. I like Allen East in this one, but it could be a shootout.
I like Allen East as well. I know they had some battles in the summer league that were close, but again, being at Allen East, I like Allen East in that one. St. Henry will be playing at Spencerville. I think this game is very intriguing because St. Henry gave Spencerville only one of their 5 losses last year. It was the first game of the year, like this year. It was a 65-58 Redskin win. St. Henry is 6-0, 6-4 over the last 10 meetings. So it's been a pretty tight series. This game is going to be played at Spencerville. I know the whole town of Spencerville is buzzing right now with this team. They're saying this could be the team. And for Coach Sensabaugh, I hope it is. He's going to be playing a very inexperienced St. Henry team that only returns one player from last year that averaged about 2 points of their 63 or 65 they averaged last year. So I'm anxious to see the guards at Spencerville, how they play with some of the key losses that they had, one playing at Defiance that we alluded to
Carter
earlier.
Sutoff.
Yeah. And St. Henry, I watched them on film. They're not a bad basketball team.
I watched him play last Saturday against LCC, and Coach Rosenbeck, he's really excited about this team. But he starts off with Rushi on Wednesday night, and then he turns around on Friday and plays a Spencerville team. So two really good matchups. In terms of starting off your season, kind of like a tip-off, but it's going to really show Coach Rosie what his team's made of. And I watched them against LCC. They got some potential. They got some shooters. They don't have a big guy that they notoriously have, but I think it's a great matchup between Spencerville and St. Henry.
Well, I'm going to go with Spencerville. And as my man Lee Corso says, going to be a lot closer than the professionals say.
Well, Spencerville is playing at home, and they always play so well at home.
Yeah. Also in the Northwest Conference, we have Bluffton will be playing at Elmwood and Lincoln View at Wayne Trace. On to the MAC, we have New Bremen at Ottoville. Last year, Ottoville won 57-53, and New Bremen had a very good basketball team, but so did Ottoville. They've only been playing this series for 3 years. Ottoville leads the series 2-1. Coach Ute is going to be welcoming the Cardinals. What do you think about this game?
Well, again, it's a home game for Ottoville. They always play so well there. They're always well prepared, even though I know Coach Ute had some kind of delays because of the soccer season. But again, these guys all have had basketballs in their hands for a long time. It's not like football, but having this start up, on the road for New Bremen, it's not an easy matchup going into Ottoville.
Yeah. And I like Ottoville in this one. I like Coach Ute, what he does with his teams. I think it will be a very good game, but I got Ottoville. How about you?
Same thing. I'm going with the Big Green.
Okay, we also got USV at Parkway. In the BVC, we got Arcadia playing at Hopewell Loudon, Arlington at Fort Jennings, Bluffton at Elmwood. Man, it might be a little off there. Oh, yeah. Bluffton is playing at Elmwood. I already mentioned that. And then Corey Rawson at Lipstick, Liberty Benton at Hardin Northern, and Lakota at Van Loo. In the PCL, we have Paulding at Continental and Collide at Antwerp. And then in the Northwest Central Conference, we have Temple at Ben Logan and Waynesfield Goshen at Riverside. So that wraps up the Friday night. Let's just look at a few games on Saturday. This is getting kind of wordy, isn't it?
Wordy it is. But hey, it's the opening weekend, so therefore we got a lot of things to talk about. We'll try to minimize it here to kind of wrap up the show a little bit. But Saturday, I truly believe it's going to be an Elida Shawnee showcase. I know Coach Howard probably didn't want to hear that, but I just have my gut feeling with the leadership and the experience and the maturity of an Elida Bulldogs. I think they take down the T-Birds on Friday night, and then I look for Shawnee to kind of steamroll the Bath Wildcats, just because knowing that their potential, their leadership with Mark Triplett, I just feel like this is the matchup.
Well, I get to plead the fifth because I'm doing analysis on the first game, and I don't want to show favoritism. So I think the second night will be two good games, two matchups,
That's
whoever match up.
Like, it's not favoritism. It's reality, like optimism, pessimism. It's realism.
Well, moving on. Napoleon plays at Defiance. Ben Logan's at Kenton. But we did want to cover one that got kind of pushed back when we just found this out before we went on air. You alluded to this, Coach Kill, and Delphus St. John's will be playing at Van Wert. Delphus St. John's won 82-50 last year and have won 8 out of the last 10 games. But 8 of those 10 games have been decided by 10 points or less.
What do you say? I can probably guarantee it's not going to be a 32-point margin there in terms of victory for Delphus St. John's. It is at Van Wert, home game for the Cougars on a Tuesday night. It's allowed Coach Aaron Elwer 3 more days of practice because they were supposed to play on a Saturday. Now they get to play at Van Wert on a Tuesday. It's only going to benefit St. John's, but it's also going to give a couple more days of rest, from Van Wert having their first night against Crestview. So to me, I still take the Blue Jays in this one, but I do like the fact that Van Wert is being guided by Jeremy Best.
I like that Van Wert gets a game under their belt and doesn't have to play back to back.
Right.
And I think that does make the game closer, but I still have Delphus St. John's as well. Going on in the Northwest Conference, we have Crestview at Miller City. In the MAC, we have Anna at New Knoxville, Parkway at Wayne Trace. A BBC matchup, we have Arlington at Kalida. Last year, Arlington won 68-44. Arlington is 3-2 since they started the series in 2019. They didn't play it in 18 or 17, and I didn't see any other years that they played. I'm sure they've played a long time ago, but I thought this was an interesting one in terms of we covered both these teams in our previews. Arlington has Coach's son coming back, Coach Verm's son. They have a lot of talent, but I feel like Kalida is going to be much improved with returning all of their starters. Coach Stexley, how do you see this game playing out?
Well, I think the Wildcats from Kalida are moving in the right direction. Didn't exactly have the season that they wanted a year ago, but those kids that were sophomores are now juniors, and the juniors are seniors. So the experience is coming back. But again, I like the guard play from Arlington. I think they got a lot of leadership in terms of Coach's son out there on the floor. For me, so I'm going with the Red Devils here.
I'm going against you. I'm going Wildcats at home just because they're at home, and Kalida is notoriously known for playing really well at home. So we also have Ayersville and Pandora and Riverdale at Corey Rawson.
Next up, the PCL. But again, this is brought to you by the Varsity Locker Room podcast. Head coach Frank Hill, head coach Matt Tabler here. So again, as we talk about the PCL, it's Temple at Continental and then Ada at Fort Jennings. This is on Saturday, November 30th. So again, we're recapping the weekend games. Next up, we got Ottoville at Perry. Moving on to the NWCC, Jackson Center at USV. And then Waynesfield Goshen at the Botkins tip-off.
So, do you know the 4 teams that are in that?
I don't know, and I don't care.
I don't either.
It's Botkins. You know what? They didn't show me any love when I was a coach. I'm not giving them any love. So, thanks to the Shelby County League.
I know Riverside's in it. That's 3 teams we got because Botkins is.
Moving on.
All right, WBL on Tuesday. We have Defiance at Rossford. In the Northwest Conference, we have Allen East at Ridgemont and Jefferson at Tenora. And like we said, the Cougars are going to be taking on the Delphus St. John's. Also in the MAC, St. Henry at Fort Loramie. And in the BVC, we have Riverdale at Corey Ross and Patrick Henry at Elmwood, Van Loo at Danbury. PCL on Saturday night, or this is Tuesday, December 3rd, Swanton at Miller City, Bucyrus at Elgin, and North Baltimore at Ottawa Hills. All right, let's go to the Player of the Week segment. Now, Player of the Week is sponsored by Henderson Concrete. For affordable, high-quality concrete services, trust Henderson Concrete Construction. With over 20 years of experience, they deliver reliable, durable results. On time, every time. Choose Henderson Concrete Construction for a job done right. Call Adam today for your free estimate at 419-235-1387.
That's Adam Henderson for the Henderson Concrete Construction.
All right, going on. Okay, Players of the Week. Since we want to give T-shirts out to these guys, and our sponsors have made this possible. So many sponsors have stepped up for this. And so we want to give some T-shirts out to some kids this year with our podcast and players that not necessarily the leading scorer or the star, but someone that helped them propel to a victory. So obviously we don't have that going on this week. But who are some players that you are looking for in general? Any team that we covered, who are you looking for to make some noise this weekend?
Well, I think you look at Beckett Berkey, again, probably an obvious choice, easy pick. I think of one of his last games that he played, where he scored, 38 of like Shawnee's 42 points or 44 points. I mean, here's a kid that can really fill it up and light it up from anywhere, do all sorts of things in terms of help his team will to win. I just think that like where we're at right now in the season, it's really, you don't really know, but there's so many guys out there that might not always have the highest scoring, but do so much for their team. And I'll be interested to see, again, after this weekend of the Tip-Off Classic, seeing 4 teams, who those guys might be.
Yeah, I like Jordan Pretty. I want to see, especially competing against Elida that first night with a whole new cast of characters. How is he going to be that leader on the floor? Isn't going to, go to the points that he had last year. Is his point total going to come down? Is he going to be more of a distributor? It's just going to be interesting to see how Jordan reacts with a whole new personnel around him. And being the leader that he is, I know he's going to do well. I'm just very interested in that. And I look for him to have a really big weekend. I look for him to be a first team or the all tournament team in the tip off. And I think that he can really propel this team the entire year.
All right. We are going to start talking about who's hot, who's cold. This is brought to you by the American Heating and Air Conditioning. American Heating and Air Conditioning is dedicated to providing the best possible solutions for your home or business. You can count on us to provide you with a system and a solution that fits your unique needs. And since we've installed many systems in the area, we've earned a reputation for doing the job right for the first time.
Hey, and they just put in my whole new HVAC system, and it was to a T. Excellent. Customer service was awesome. The owner up there is fantastic. Scott, my salesman, was perfect. Everything's been going great. I highly recommend them for an HVAC system.
Well, when we think about who's hot, who's not, we really can't talk about any teams because we really don't know. So my obvious who's hot, who's not, this is my who's not, is the OHSAA. They created 7 state champions this year, 7 divisions. Still, the Northwest District has no clue where they're playing, who they're playing in terms of sites. I talked to Coach Auer the other day, who's pretty in tune with a lot of things. He's heard nothing
because he's higher up for our district date. I mean, he's the president.
And so when you got your guys that are trying to plan, and again, as we talked about in some of our previews, you as a head coach would always send your assistants and making sure that they're doing the scouting. You have no idea who you're scouting. And then just recently, it was just released that they're going to be playing games at the old fairgrounds. What a dump.
I saw that. I've never been in there. So
I went there scouting one time back in the day with Coach Sag, and I thought, this is a basketball facility? I mean, one, it's huge, it's big, but it's not a basketball place you want to go and actually enjoy a state kind of a atmosphere.
Well, I'm going totally cold with this right now. I think in theory, 7 divisions could be done, but it was done so quickly that I don't think it was done. I think it was done very poorly. I think that now you're asking teams to jam 22 games. I know that Shawnee is going to 20-game season next year just because they're not going to be able to get all their games in. I talked to Coach Tripp. They're cutting it down to 20. It's just one of those things. And then you're telling me that a state semifinal game, and no offense to the Elida Fieldhouse, could be played at the Elida Fieldhouse? Like, I would have never, my team at Perry in 2017 would have never got to experience the Schottenstein Center because we got beat in the state semifinal game.
Yep.
And we could have gotten beat at a local high school gym, and they would have never got to experience play in front of 11,000 people. I think that if you thought this out a little more, you got a little more input from the people that are actually involved, athletic directors, coaches, you could have come up with a better solution. And they might tweak it, and I would assume they would, but I just remember going down to the state tournaments with my father, and then later going down with my coaching staff and being able to see a team on Thursday and then turn around and watch them play on a Saturday in a state championship after they won on Thursday. You're not going to see these teams until the state finals, especially for the teams on the east side of the state. You're only going to get to see them one time.
We used to talk about, I know Jerry Snodgrass, one of the longtime commissioners who was fantastic for the OHSA, always talked about the state tournament that Ohio would put on. And I think we as the state of Ohio would pride ourselves in having the best state tournament with facilities, whether it's a shot now with Dayton, but Bowling Green, Toledo as being regional sites for boys basketball. What a blessing high school kids get to play. And also got to showcase some of your top athletes who were still playing on those courts because they were college courts. Now the state of Ohio has kind of dummied it down and watered down not saying that they need Elida Fieldhouse is not worthy enough, but it's not to me a regional, let alone a state semifinal site. And it's unfortunate now that the kids go, well, I made it to state semis, but I played Elida.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's like this in a lot of states, but this is what separated Ohio from all those other states. I mean, you go to some states, they have the private tournament and the public tournament. Like in New York, they have that. You go out to California, they start their games at 4:30 in the afternoon, varsity games, because it's just not a priority out there. It is a priority in Ohio. So when it's a priority, make it the best thing it can be. And when you go to 7 divisions, I'm not sure it's the best thing. All right, moving on to the over-under segment. This is where Coach Kill and I will set a couple things here, and we will take the over or under. This is sponsored by CCR Realtors. CCR sets the standard when it comes to local real estate. If you're looking to buy or sell, see agent Jody Cartagena for all your local real estate needs. Jody's done a fantastic job. She's sold some of my rental properties. She's helped a couple of my friends get into new houses. She just does an excellent job. So if you're thinking about buying or selling, please see Jody at CCR Realtors.
Well, and with that being said, we talk about the over under, how many wins and how many losses that teams will have. And think about this weekend with the Shawnee Indians. How many wins will the Shawnee have this weekend? I think this is pretty easy.
Well, we're putting the over under at 1.
Easy,
because you're either going over or under that. You can't go any more. I mean, you can't put it at 2 because you can't go over that.
Right.
You can't put it at 0 because you can't go under that. So 1 is the number. So if I'm looking at how many wins for Shawnee this weekend, I'm going on Coach Tripp's record and how many games he's won in the tip-off, how many tournaments. I think he's going to actually be tied with Coach Adams after this week. I look at the experience they return. I look at Beckett, like you alluded to earlier, on a player to watch, and his brother Trevick, and how Jagger mixes in with that group, and Tate, not Mayberry, Tate Bender, the point guard, how he facilitates as a point guard. I am definitely going with the over on 1. I look for Shawnee to win the tip-off classic this weekend.
This is the easiest over. Easiest one. Moving on. How many free
Well, you
throws?
never gave me the over. So you easily say over.
Yes.
Okay.
Not even close.
All right.
I mean, unless their bus gets stuck in some mud somewhere.
But you don't have them winning the WBL, but you have them easily winning the tip-off classic.
First 2 games. No one cares.
Okay.
I mean, they do, but
All right. All right. The next one. How many free throws? And I did this one. I made this one up because as LCC is notoriously known for fouls.
Oh, and Elida wasn't when they were led by you.
But how many free throws will be shot in the LCC Elida game? And I'm going to give you a number.
You give me a
number.
number.
You take the over under on this.
You're going to give me the number. Okay.
Okay. Or you can set the number. I'll let you, because
you're older.
Here we go. 48. All right. I'm going to say 30. I was giving my age at 48. That was not the over under, Frank. No,
going.
35 free throws.
OMG. That's exactly the number I was going to throw.
Well, you got to take an over or under.
I'm going over.
I'm going over too. Both teams are going to foul like crazy.
But I thought 35 was a good one as well, because if you go, 12 and, maybe 15, 20 here, like each team's going to have double figures. If not, because both teams are going to drive and both teams are going to have.
And that's my analysis, is what I was going to give. They're still got their football legs. Everyone's still not in basketball shape. Both teams are physical, notoriously physical. So are the officials going to call those fouls? Is it going to be a close game where they don't have to foul, or they have to foul because the team is down? But I'm definitely going with the over on 35. We'll revisit that next week.
All right. Once again, we would like to thank our good friends, our sponsors of the Varsity Locker Room podcast, Frickers of Lima, Stolly's Insurance, American Heating and Air Conditioning, Jody Cartagena at CCR Realtors, Henderson Concrete, and then we'd also like to add Dalton Brenner at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services will be sponsoring. Listen to the Varsity Locker Room podcast every Wednesday as we will be recapping last week's game, and we will be previewing the upcoming games for the week. Until next week, thanks again.